But honestly, the product is once you connected like our director, yeah, that's what that's what and we also get it out. So I'll try to get this place for you. Oh yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to. That'll really help. I think that'll be a good thing to drop site and content. That's awesome. Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to. That. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is Scott Roberts with Explore Scientific, and this is the 20th episode of the OpenGOTO Community Live. And joining us today is Chris Moses. Jerry, why don't you introduce Chris?
Sure. I want to thank everybody for showing up today. We're going to have a special episode today with our guest, Chris Moses, who's the developer of the OpenGOTO Community project, the PMC8 configuration manager. And
great, yeah, and I'll get you that.
Is Chris there? I don't see him on the screen. Is he available there?
There he is.
Okay, cool. I was just looking up and down at my TV, so I didn't see anybody but myself. And
that's right.
But so Chris, I met Chris. He was an early adopter for the PMC8 system. He actually bought a G11 PMC8 back in 2017, and I think he was one of the first customers I dealt with directly to work with the auto guiding system and to work to improve the auto guiding port on the PMC8 and discover an issue that we had with different camera systems that connect to the SD4 port. So, Chris, I want to, kind of introduce yourself in terms of your background and tell us what you do.
Sure. I'm a software developer by trade. I've been developing software for 30 years. Also an entrepreneur. Started a couple of software companies out in Silicon Valley. So I've been involved with all aspects of software development, tech support, the full gamut. So let me switch over to my screen if that's okay. And we've got
it may take a minute for Scott to get back. He walked out for a second.
So he's the major domo here.
Yeah, so he's controlling the screens. But so, Chris, you developed a configuration manager because you were. I mean, I had put out documents showing how to do the manual setup to switch between the Wi-Fi default Wi-Fi connection over to a serial port connection for the ASCOM driver. And even being a programmer, and I understood that it took a little bit of work to do this, but I tried to cookbook it for everybody to use to do the switch with the instructions. But you were kind enough to offer to create a program that would make it much easier to do this switch, and I think that was the first function that you put into this configuration manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was really my purpose in initially writing it, was to just do the switch from wired to wireless, TCP to UDP. That came along later, I guess. But then once that was done, there was kind of a hodgepodge of other things that people were having problems with, getting the database in the right place for Explore stars, downloading the firmware, things like that. So the configuration manager kind of became a kitchen sink type application. We threw all that stuff in there.
Yeah, I didn't really release another version of the firmware until the product was, I think it was 2018, because it was just the default or the release version of the first mounts. There was no updates to the firmware for quite a while, for about a year and a half, I think. And then when I decided I need to make a change to the firmware, finally, it was pretty stable, but there was some things that were coming up that I needed to make changes for, and so we had to start developing a way for users to be able to update the firmware on their system, and that's when it was added in, I think.
Yeah. I think just before it came out, we started talking about how to get that added in.
So you got your screen available, Scott? Do you see a screen?
Not yet.
I'm sharing. Yes, I think I am.
Not yet.
Share the screen.
Now you are.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. These are mainly notes myself. So we've talked a little bit about the history and motivation for the configuration manager. We've talked a little bit about what it does. It does some other things that we haven't just discussed. Then there's a whole slew of things that it doesn't do and shouldn't do. Then I'd like to walk you through using some of the CM features and then talk about the future of the CM. That's the motivation. Now, should I go through, do you guys think, and do a demo of each of the major pieces of functionality?
Yeah, I think you can. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. We're also announcing today that we have a beta version of new version of the configuration manager. It's mainly small changes and bug fixes, nothing major. But after we play with it for a couple days, we'll push it out to everybody. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. Before you get started here, I will recognize some people that have joined us. We have Dan Janisic, Stephen Amara Jr., Jenny Bedell Shelley, excuse me, Mike Wiesner, lurking once again, Gary Palmer, Daniel Higgins, Wolfgang is with us, Charlie Walsh says hello, Mbante from Cameroon, Africa. I think he's got some sort of special program coming up this weekend that he was telling me about. Dan Janisic, who else?
The echo has started again.
Oh, Dan is asking us if you can go full screen in your presentation. If you can take that into presentation mode, Chris.
Yeah, I think Chris's microphone is picking up the broadcast, so it's echoing.
Well, I can mute it as much as possible, I guess. Okay, you want me to take the PowerPoint into
presentation? So if you go down to the bottom there, you'll see the little icon. It looks like a pull-down screen. Just to the right of that. Keep going. Keep going. Another one. That's the screen. That's presentation mode.
Ah, okay.
There we go.
Okay. So yeah, we talked about that, the history and motivation, what the configuration manager does. All right, let's take a look at the configuration manager. One thing you'll notice right away if you've used it before, I'm going to start it up now. Boom. Two things different right away. One, off the bat, it will offer to automatically detect your mount connection type. And two, it opens larger. It's not scrunched into a corner that you have to resize.
Hey, Chris, let me interrupt real quick.
Sure.
Scott, there's a really weird scrolling sort of thing going on in the background.
Oh, yeah. You minimize your Skype window. Chris?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Minimize the Skype window on your screen. That's better.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
I think you're good to go, Chris, if you want to continue.
I think I think he froze up there.
I think that could have been part of the issue with his microphone breaking up too. He's still on Skype though, right? I mean, it looks like he's frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen. Well, folks, we have a little bit of a technical difficulty here, so let's he's definitely frozen. Look, he just looks like Okay, so I am going to
Let me give him a call on
Yeah. Okay, he'll call back in. He's realized now he's off.
So, Scott, why don't you talk about, I don't know, Galileo or somebody?
Yeah. Who do we have
Okay,
online with us right now?
All right. Well, we were going to give away one of these things. Okay. So, and what is this? You guys will know what it is, right? So it's yeah, it's an Explore Scientific. What do they call these things?
Muffs or something?
Buffs?
A buff?
It's a COVID mask now.
It's a COVID mask. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we're as we try to get Chris back on here. So anyhow, we're going to give away one of these, and we were going to come up with this question, and I came up with this really obscure question. Okay, and the question was. So we're not going to make this the real question for it. We'll go with something easier. But the question is who sent Galileo a letter, okay, that inspired him to build the telescope in the way that he did, okay? And if somebody can give me an answer to that, I will be blown away.
Without Googling it in the next 30 minutes.
Google's fine. Google's fine. This is not easy to find.
Or pronounce. That's a hint.
And Janisic says, I'm a marketing master. And Mike wanted us to sing a trio. And Mr. Thump 30 said, Mike said, I believe they are called gaiters. Aren't gaiters like you wear them on your legs or something?
Yeah, that's what I've always worn, gaiters.
I don't know.
Keep my pants closed when I'm out wearing waders.
Yeah. And I can see Chris's eyes blinking now, so he's not frozen anymore.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how long I was frozen for. I just went ahead and started speaking.
Okay. All right. We were at the very first part of your program. And while you go through your...
Okay. I made it quite a few tabs.
Yeah. But go ahead and share your screen again.
Oh, yep.
And we do not have an answer yet for the correct person.
Okay, now I'm
It was not a Dutch guy.
All right, how's that look?
That looks pretty good.
Okay, good. So, of course, the first tab is the instructions, which I'm sure you all read diligently.
Yes.
Yes. Most of the things you need to know are in here. It's a fairly thorough little instruction manual. But the first thing you're going to want to do when you come over here is select your mount. Say it's G11. We're working on making it auto find the mount right now. So by the time it's released, that'll probably be in there. You probably won't have to select your mount type. You can find your COM port with the find button and then select it from the drop-down list.
Okay.
Let's come back to the wired to wireless switching. That's kind of a whole subject unto itself. Let's take a look at the Explore Stars functionality. One problem that beginning users justifiably had was the pictures directory for the database in particular is really finicky as to where it has to go. So you'd have to download it and then extract it. When you extract it, it tends to create another directory. So it was just inconvenient and cumbersome for people that weren't familiar with PCs. So we added that into the configuration manager. You can install the database to Windows or to an SD card for Android. And to install it to Windows is real easy. Just select Windows, hit download, takes it, I don't know, a minute or two. It automatically sticks it in the right place, and that's it. Pretty much the same thing for an SD card. Just select install to an SD card, select the drive that you have, and then select install.
I demonstrated this before on a previous episode. The one thing to keep in mind is when you hit install to Windows, it's a different file than what it is when you're installed SD card, and it knows. You can see the difference there.
Yeah, you can see the file changing. So that should get you up and going with the database. Then once more versions of firmware started coming out, we needed some way to deal with that. So we added that into the configuration manager. One little change from the previous version is you can now find your current firmware version, which contains some extra information, but your firmware version is in that number. And now when you go to download, I told it I was using a G11, so it only pulls down the G11 EEPROMs. If I come back over here and tell it I'm using an Exos 2, and then download, I only get the Exos 2 ones.
Chris, is this the current version or is this the new version?
This is the new version. This is the new version. Yep.
Yeah. We are getting quite a bit of echo here.
Okay. Let me know what I can do about that.
What we'll do is we'll let you run through this, okay? And Jerry and myself and Kent will stop commenting, and because it's coming off of your speakers is where it's coming from.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I could try turning my speakers down.
That might help. And somebody said my microphone was too loud, so.
Is that any better in terms of echo?
I think so.
It's when we speak. So if you can't hear us, then
That's
I
better.
hear you still.
Okay. That's
better.
Okay, good. Then let's see the advanced tab. The advanced tab is going to have some small cosmetic changes. I think I'll get rid of these debug messages. Those are only of interest to me and maybe Jerry. They were used during the development process to help us debug things. There's really no need for that anymore, so I'll probably free up that screen real estate space. But it works just like before.
Hey, Chris, you're working pretty quick. One thing people miss is right there on the when you communications method. Talk about that, because that's a step people miss.
Okay, yeah. Before you can send a mount command, you've got to tell it how you want to send that via serial, TCP, or UDP. And that may not necessarily be the way you're connected. You could be connected via TCP, but still have a serial cable going into the mount, say for uploading firmware or something like that. So you have to select the communication method before you can do the send. And I guess I should really move that up on top so it's a little more explicit up there.
It's sort of hidden down there. Yes. I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And that's really the gist of the functionality of the configuration manager. Setting and changing connections, doing the Explore Stars database, uploading firmware, and the Advanced tab. You can also, if you have a firmware file, say that Jerry has made specially for you, or an old one floating around that isn't in the repository anymore, you can also just select the file and directly upload it in the Advanced tab.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see, what else? CM doesn't do everything. It's not designed to do everything. It originally started off as a pretty lightweight tool that we've added on to. At some point, it probably needs a complete overhaul, just technically. But it's not designed to do things like interact with ASCOM, interact with any other program. It's designed to be a complete standalone program that does very few things and does them well. But I would like your feedback. What else should it do? I know there's the forum on groups.io, so keep your ideas coming, or difficulties you have with it. If you find something non-intuitive or a pain or some better way to do it, let me know. If there's some piece of functionality, let me know. And a lot of times people email me directly just because my name and address are right there on it. That's fine.
Talk about how you share the code on GitHub, and it's an OpenGOTO community project.
Yeah, okay. So a lot of times people will email me directly, and that's fine. I'm happy to help, but I may not be able to get back to you as fast as somebody else on the forums might. So you're really better off asking a question or asking for help on the forums. One of the nice things about the PMC8, the reason I really bought it was because of the open source nature of it. So programmers are free to do things like this. I mean, I wrote this all. Jerry told me the commands and things like that, but it was just me writing it. I don't think there's any other telescope out there that lets you do that, or mount that lets you have that sort of low-level control. At least I've never heard of it. So it's a big boon, because anybody can come in if there's something they don't like about the configuration manager. They can go to GitHub, take the code and modify it however they want, and let me know to stick in some updates or release their own version or do whatever they want with it. So I'm really happy with the open source nature of things.
Well, that was important to us, is to be able, I wanted to have astronomers control what GOTO meant, with their telescopes. And, up until we released this, the PMC8, and created the OpenGOTO community, it was basically manufacturers, three guys in a room deciding what this was going to be like and how wonderful that was going to be. And everybody should love that, right? That should be, yeah. And if they don't get it, then there's something wrong with them. All right. So, you're kind of, trying to hammer that square peg into maybe a round this way. And I thought, who better to create GOTO than the community itself, And so when I worked for another telescope company, I cannot tell you how many times I had to refuse NASA, Lawrence Livermore Labs, lots of organizations that were willing to sign non-disclosures and everything, and the answer was always no. We're not going to give away any piece, no hints, no sample code, nothing. Okay, so while we have not completely released all of the source code, we have given good sample code. You were able to develop a configuration manager with it. And we do, for anyone that's really serious about creating an app and participating in the OpenGOTO community with an app situation, we will work with them to make sure that they're successful. So, yeah,
That's right.
Good.
We did release the full project file for the ASCOM driver, which Michael Fulbright was able to use to do a quick build, a quick design and build of the Indy driver. That's what got that done pretty quickly, because he had all that code as a reference on how to control the telescope and map it to the Indy API.
mm-hmm. Right. So,
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
let's see. Do we have any questions from our group here? Somebody wants to know if there's a new Comet Hunter coming down the tracks. Mr. Connolly, not at the moment. No, not yet.
I also briefly wanted to mention the future of the configuration manager.
Okay.
I plan on supporting it as actively as possible. It really hasn't been much work since I initially developed it. There have been a couple bugs here or there, little things, but it's been pretty self-sufficient. When I went to dig into the code a couple days ago, I had to refresh myself. It had been so long since I looked at it. I told Kent to be ready to answer questions because, frankly, he's used it more than I have at this point. Some minor changes listed there. Keep posting suggestions, as I mentioned. Whatever you want within reason, I can add. One thing people ask about quite a bit is there going to be a Linux or a Mac version? The short answer is maybe. It depends on Microsoft. They're releasing a new version of their .NET framework, which is a developer tool set that lets you write code. This new version is cross-platform, but we'll have to wait and see how cross-platform it really is. Make sure it supports things like serial connections and low-level application interfaces like that. If all that's good, then 90% of the functionality could be moved over pretty fast if there's demand for it. I don't know how much demand there really is. Maybe Kent or Scott can comment on that, how much demand there really is for a Mac version or a Linux version.
We get it's a regular question when we talk about the configuration manager.
Okay.
Whether it be a Mac version. We are, for people who love to use the Mac environment, to just get a machine just for the configuration manager doesn't make a lot of sense for them. So. Here's another question that's just come up on the group. Dan Janisic wants to know, why can't it auto search for the connection type?
Well, you can do find current connection, and it'll find whether it's wired or wireless. So there, click do it on the find current connection. It comes up. Mount appears to be connected on serial. So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Is there a way to just make it, as soon as you plug in, it just goes, oh, here's how you're connected, so you don't have to click do it?
Well, yes, that is.
I thought we talked about that, Chris, before. We have discussed this in the past, and I think the tool that you're using, we're using the propeller tool to go out and detect the DLL that Parallax created to go out and detect where the system is connected on serial anyway. That's used in your program, and I thought that the automation on that was a little difficult. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
The automation's a little difficult, yes. Now, it will, when you start the program now, ask you if you want to detect your mount type. So if I say yes, it'll tell me I'm connected on serial.
I see.
So hopefully that helps with that a little bit.
Automatic. It's almost automatic.
Well, the problem is that you have to have a user interaction to get that to work with the tool that we have right now. But I think somebody a couple weeks ago or maybe looked at a tool that Parallax actually is an open source tool that they were looking at on how to actually do the firmware on other platforms, how to do the firmware upload. And I'm sure there might be something in that tool that's cross-platform that may enable us to do that.
That's why I said if we do it cross-platform, 90% of the functionality will transfer over pretty easily. The firmware upload could be tricky. It depends how good of an API and documentation Propeller has. If they give us all the codes and things to just stream a file and have that uploaded and let us know what sort of CRC they're using, then it should be pretty straightforward. If their code is obtuse or outdated and there's no documentation, then that version may not make it, that piece of functionality may not make it to the Mac or Linux version.
Mm-hmm. There's a question here from Jeff Wise. Is there any chance of moving connections towards USB-C? Serial is not new. Now we had discussed the serial connection before.
Yeah, we do. The iXS 100 does use a USB connection to the computer directly because I've got a FTDI chip built into the PMC8 communications on the iXS 100. As Scott said, we did discuss why we use a serial DB9 connection, old school DB9 connection, and it's not due to the fact that we wanted to use RS-232. It's because of the connection type and the robustness of the locking connectors and the cable.
Reliability.
That's the reliability. That's kind of what drove us towards that. There are plenty of USB to DB9 serial adapters out there that work fine. They're very the FTDI chipset on those adapters work great. They're very reliable, or as reliable as USB can be, I should say. But there's a misnomer that people think that USB is not serial, but that's what USB stands for, is Universal Serial Bus. It is serial. It's just the connector is different. That's all it is. It's a higher level control mechanism of a serial port that's been created by Microsoft and actually the industry to replace the old style serial RS-232 connection.
Yeah, that DB9 connector has been around for a very long time. It's easy to find a replacement for. It's not a specialized connector. Okay, so if you're traveling, you forgot a cable or something like that, you can go down to, you can get a Amazon to overnight you one, if needed, or you can go to, a computer store and probably should just be able to pick one up off the shelf.
That's why we did it for the motor connections too.
That's right. I can't tell you how many times that I have gone to start parties with equipment that had specialized connectors. Okay. And get 3 hours to my dark sky site and where's my connector at, and be dead in the water, So now I guess, you could have the same scenario happen to you, but being 3 hours out in the middle of nowhere, you are more likely to be able to find a connector that is common than a specialized one. A specialized connector can take, sometimes days or a couple of weeks to get, okay, versus getting something that afternoon or overnight.
Yeah, and the cables can be expensive, somewhat relatively expensive compared to what you can find.
It is a profit center for companies that make specialized connectors.
Definitely.
Certainly was where I worked before. It was a profit center. I didn't want to make profit on the backs of somebody losing their cable. So anyhow.
I think that's about all I really had.
Yeah, I think
any questions?
I think there's one
certainly
thing
happy to answer.
Chris. There's Wolfgang is. Let me make sure I'm getting this question right. What he wrote was the configuration manager should should, by installing the EAS database to an SD card, create a folder.
Yeah, that's a bug. In fact, we were just talking about that earlier today. I'll fix that before this version 1.04 is released.
Okay.
In the next couple of days, so that'll be fixed. That's on the list. Already started it.
Okay. And Dusty Haskins says availability and convenience are the greatest thing in the world when you are in the middle of nowhere. That's true.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
another
That's
country, you know, you're on an eclipse strip or something like that. So, okay. Well, Chris, thank you for joining us. We are going to continue on with the show with and discuss a couple more of the feature requests that we've had.
okay.
And we hope to have you back on the show again.
Thank you.
Very much.
Now, how do I stop sharing?
I'll do it. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, so here we are. So let's get back to our question. Let's do a simpler question. Okay, I'm going to give you guys the answer for the Galileo question. It is.
Did no one get it, Scott? No one got it, right?
No one got it. It is a guy named.
Imagine that. Imagine why they didn't get it.
Yeah, it's pretty obscure. Okay. Apparently, Galileo in his papers, when he is describing his invention of the telescope, claims to have made his invention through kind of a almost like divine inspiration. Okay. Which is now kind of being pulled into question. And Dan, it was not the Pope. The Pope didn't have the answer on this. There are two characters that are in the background of Galileo configuring his telescope. One of them is a Venetian, like a statesman. His name is Paolo Sarpi. Okay, and Paolo Sarpi was someone that wanted separation of church and state. He was someone that often was at odds with the Pope and the Catholic Church, and I think he was tried several times for heresy. And he was a good friend of Galileo's, and so it's not too surprising that Galileo got in trouble with the Pope. You know, he kind of ridiculed him and his discoveries and some of his writings. This is what really got him into trouble. But another guy is from France, a Frenchman named Jacques Badovier. Okay, and so at the time that Galileo is building his telescope, there are already dozens of spyglasses that have been built by Dutch spectacle makers. Hans Lippershey, who was Dutch, was trying for a patent. He was not granted a patent because his design was already kind of out there with a bunch of other guys, and so it was. That's the reason why he was denied a patent. Bergman Scooter says, I thought a Dutch inventor invented the telescope. They invented spyglasses, okay, and in fact really invented the telescope. But their magnifications were quite low. They were like 3 and 4 power spyglasses, okay, and they had an extremely narrow field of view. If you guys ever get a chance to actually look through a replica of Galileo's telescope, it also has a very narrow field of view, okay, but imagine it even narrower, okay? So that was the problem with the spyglasses at the time, and these inventions were not being made for astronomy; they were being made for the military, and this was also Galileo's first intention, is that it would be a military application. Anyways, it's a really, really interesting story. There is a document called "How Did Galileo Develop His Telescope?" A new letter by Paolo Sarpi. And so you can see, let's see if you can get a good view of that. This is what you want to find, look up. It is a great 28-page read and very enlightening. to the life and times that was going on, with Galileo and the Medici family and his claims on the invention of the telescope. So we do want to, however, give one of these, not a gator, what do we call him, a buff, or anyways, a mask. And so I'm going to let Kent ask the question.
Oh, Jerry came up with it. He can do it. I have my own question.
You have your own question.
Okay, let's. Okay, I'll ask my question that we talked about.
Okay.
What planet did Galileo discover? Be interesting to see if I can come up with that quickly.
He actually discovered it. It's not the planet that he observed necessarily, but it's one that he discovered.
It's one that nobody else had ever seen before. What planet did he discover? So waiting for the, Facebook is behind a little bit. So
No.
people
how long are we going to wait for
says
this
Jupiter.
one?
The answer is no.
Not Jupiter.
No, Jupiter was well known to the back in antiquity.
To be a wanderer.
Yeah. No, not Jupiter.
Not Jupiter.
Not Venus.
Neptune. There we go. Jeff Weiss got it. Neptune.
Yeah, Jeff Weiss. Congratulations.
Oh, good.
All right, Jeff,
And,
you are the winner of this beautiful buff.
Jeff
called a buff.
So Kent, explain what Galileo did there and how we know that he discovered or found it.
He was observing on nights in 1613, in January of 1613, and he made drawings, which is the only way everybody, documented what they saw then. And over the course of the month, he showed that a star moved. And there is some discussion that he actually may have realized it was a planet and didn't do anything with it. But in his documentation, you can go back in planetary programs on the specific nights that he said that he noted on his drawings. And in a planetarium program, it matches up perfectly with where Neptune was placed with Jupiter right then. So he documented that it moved, and his drawings match up with planetary programs.
Yeah. So the answer is Neptune. Jenny Bedell Shelley is saying, what was the answer? It is Neptune.
So, Jeff, send an email to me at service, SERVICE, at explorescientific.com.
Yeah.
And I will get you your ninja mask, as Mr. Thump has called it. So that's service at explorescientific.com. And give me your shipping address and phone number, and I will get it off to you.
Okay.
And we have two versions. We want to send them both? I'll send.
Sure. Send them both.
I'll send two. We have a black one and a gray one. I'll just send them both.
Yeah. Yep. And
awesome.
Wolfgang, you can buy them from our web store. It'll be up online. So, but you might win another one on our show. So you never know. We probably do this again tomorrow. So, do we have any other comments, or do we want to bring up any other parts about the feature requests?
Yeah, I've got one that I wanted to focus on today that we can talk about.
Okay.
There's been a couple similar to this, related to this. Let me share my screen. You see it?
Yep.
So I'm on the feature request subgroup, and Bill Rowe, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
Suggested this to. He wanted to improve the Explore Star search, and there's a little bit of explanation going on. So on the searches, he says search is hidden in the hamburger menu in the top left, which is the Windows pull down icon. It's 3 bars, and but that's the standard Windows interface for these. And And then he says on Windows, the search pops up a bright blue rectangle over the right-hand side of the screen. Maybe this is the keyboard for iOS, Android. No, this doesn't need to be any more than a dialog box. So what Dan did when he developed these apps, and not just the Windows version of the Explorer Stars, but also iOS and Android, we took advantage of the built-in search facility in the operating system for this tool, and that's why you see it where it's located. It's a standard interface for searching anything on the computer system, and we included that as part of the search in the Explorer Stars application, and that was the design decision for that. So the assumption there is that people are familiar with their device and how it works with their operating system. So if they look for a search on something, they'll say, "Oh, I know how to search for stuff. It's the same on every program. It's this way on this platform." And so that's what we did. What Bill would like to see is a dedicated search window that's another dialog box that's separate from that built-in search tool that may be more sophisticated. And that goes in with a couple other suggestions for searches, because you may want to search for, I know we had a suggestion to search for items that are specific keywords, which we can do, but also put them in a specific order, like in right ascension order. Or you might want to search for bright stars that are at this magnitude or something like that. Or you want to search for, another suggestion is search for items that are within 5 degrees of where I'm pointed at right now on the telescope, something like that. So there is room for improvement on the search tool, and we do have a couple of 2 or 3 suggestions that are related to search. I think maybe Kent actually suggested one also. I can't remember. Is that right, Kent?
Yeah, I've had a couple of suggestions. I think we documented them in there somewhere.
Yeah, they're documented in there also. But
a nearby tour. I'm at this spot. Give me a tour of the nearby objects that you can just go step through. And I will agree that blue box coming up can be bothersome as well on so, and the white bar across the top. That's
Blue's not necessarily harmful for night vision. You'll see, like in submarines, for example, when they're going into where it lights out, they'll use blue inside that blue light instead of red light. And I recall a long time ago when Jack Newton was working with us at Mead Instruments and asked us to change the camera control software for the Victor to have a countdown with big blue numbers, for the exposure. So, which we did accommodate at one point. So, but white is definitely a problem. And you know what? You may be able to. I know, like on my iPad, I can change the color of all the screen, and so I hit the tab 3 times, it goes in, and I've got it configured to where the whole screen goes red. There's no white light that can seep out from anything,
Right.
So.
And I turned my tablets way down on brightness anyway, and on my iPad, on the iPad version, I do the same thing. I make it all red so I can use any app I want and not hammer my night vision. So that's what Mr. Up 30 asks about Explorer Stars for Android. I noticed the control screen does not size down to fit on a smartphone. Is there a fix? The short answer is no, because what happens is you can make it auto size, but then the buttons become so small that you can't tap them.
Yeah, we have to write a whole new interface, and we are in fact working on that. So
there was, Jerry, wasn't there somebody a couple of weeks ago that side loaded it on an Android?
Yeah, there was a phone an Android phone that they were able to side load. I provided instructions on the forum on how to go to the side load, and he got it working on the phone somehow. I haven't heard any more results about that. But again, the problem is that the interface is not designed for that small of a screen. The buttons, each of the sections of the display for the existing Explore Stars needs to be a separate display basically on a phone, and they need to be separated that way. But I don't remember the fellow's name. Maybe we can find that thread and query and see if he's done any testing with it and what it looks like.
I'm sure we can find that.
Maybe
somewhere.
one of our members can go find that thread and do that.
Yep. All right. Okay. And Jenny says that Windows has a night light mode that tints white to an orange color. There might also be other apps. There are apps that that allow you to change your screen colors. So, all over. So that's something else to just double check.
That's interesting because Explore Stars originally, early on the Windows version, remember we had a version that said that could display. It displayed red as default, but it was white also, so you could use it during the day. We had problems. If you try to use Explore Stars during the day, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Because the red display is really hard to see in sunlight. I mean, you can shade it with a tint or something, but if you're setting your scope up during day, like today, like in the summertime,
yeah,
you want to set your scope up and everything. If you're using Explore Stars, you're going to have a difficult time seeing the display in red, I think, unless you shade it somehow.
Right.
I'm looking for that thread right now, not finding it.
Okay.
Tip of my fingers.
For another time.
Yep. Another time.
Okay. And Ron Delval says, did you ever use a shortwave radio back in the day to hear the sound of WWV in Colorado? Beep, 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 coordinated universal time while observing?
I used to love leap years because you could listen to WWV and listen to them insert the leap year and the leap minute. And I was always, and this is my geek hanging out. I was just like, that's so cool.
That is pretty.
So excited to listen to the leap second get added or the leap minute get added, But I didn't ever use it to time anything, but I know plenty of people have. Mike Wiesner says he has shortwave. He has a shortwave. I have a shortwave radio in my observatory for WWV.
Jenny says Backyard EOS Nikon developer has a standalone app called Backyard Red. Yeah, so there's probably several different apps out there that can help astronomers with colors on their screens. There is also what we used to do in the old days, and that was to just get a red screen that went over the whole monitor.
A piece of cellophane. There's companies that sell that.
Ruby left.
You could go and get a piece of red acrylic, deep red, ruby red acrylic, to put it on there. And so we would have like little pads of Velcro and just put it on over the screen. Maybe something around the edges to keep light from leaking out sideways, that kind of thing. So, and that's kind of cool to do because if it gets dewy out, then your screen isn't getting attacked by a lot of moisture, right off the top. So, yep. But many ways to go here. I do want to announce that we have some special shows coming up. Cesar Brolo from Sirocco down in Argentina. He's one of our dealers down there, but this guy has been doing astronomy outreach and astrophotography for a long time. He is currently coordinating the December 2020 total eclipse of the sun expedition down in Argentina. And so, if you are braving making a trip around that time to go see a total eclipse of the sun, this might be a guy to get in touch with. I don't have exact day right now when he's going to appear, but he's ready for his show, and so I imagine we're probably about 2 or 3 days off, something like that. Also, we have the 4th of July coming up. Explore Scientific will be closed on the 4th. And I don't know if we're closed on Thursday or Thursday and Friday. I don't think so.
I think I've tried to convince you of that, but you haven't gone for it.
I was going to take next week off in lieu of this week. Since I got too much to do. I'll take all week off next week to celebrate the 4th of July. Yeah.
I'll say things in your place, okay, that I think you might say, okay?
Yeah, right, yeah. I'm sure you've heard me enough to where you can blabber like I do.
Stuff. Yeah, I've got
blabber
I
like
should
I do.
record some stuff and just kind of snip it together and just throw that out there. That'll work.
Yeah, I'll be talking like, this one is the type of one, type D, like that.
Max Headroom.
That's
guys, we have a lot of fun. We actually have a lot of fun doing these shows, okay? I can't tell you how much enjoyment we've gotten out of it. It's been a lot of fun doing it with you that are watching, and so we will always have things to talk about. And Scott, I need a smoke detector and some dogs. That's true. I'll have the Jerry Hubbell environment going on behind me.
I forgot to do my dog background. I was going to do a dog background.
That's right.
I haven't heard the beep. I haven't heard the beep all day today. Is the beep gone?
No.
You tell me.
Well, I haven't heard it. Did you replace the battery? Jerry, you replaced the battery, didn't you?
No, it's a psychological test. That's what it is. It's to see how long it takes you guys to not even hear it anymore.
I think you've gotten rid of it.
No, what's happened is I have a constant ringing in my ear from it. Okay, so I can't tell anymore.
It's literally become just background noise. Like when I lived next to a railroad track, I slept through the trains. So
right. It's like living next to the sewage plant. You can't even smell it anymore, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's quite that bad. Maybe.
All right, guys, we are devolving to So we should probably say goodbye. I don't have any other shows on today, but probably Caesar Burlow will be up next. Pranvera from Astronomy to Kosovo has agreed to join us from Australia, so that's another show that we have coming up. And we will continue to have a lot more programming. We really appreciate it, and you guys have a good night. And this weekend, if you're not joining us again tomorrow or the next day, we hope you have a great 4th of July weekend. We'll talk to you later. Over and out.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.